Commercial leases are getting shorter. Hear why. Stay tuned for this morning's minutes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, Josh Wapshot, episode 1707. Commercial leases are getting shorter. Who carries the risks? Is this a good thing for the marketplace? What are the owner's considerations? Josh, interesting topic, this one. We even just talking before, there was many avenues to consider. What stemmed this conversation, we're chatting with John in the office, and Josh and I do a lot of leasing as well. A lot of historically in entering a commercial lease would be 3 or 5 year commitment, but more so now than ever, the demand for 6-month leases, 12-month leases is getting stronger and stronger. And we just want to talk through why that may be, benefits. Josh, what are you seeing out there, specifically on the demand side for these shorter lease terms?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely seeing it a lot more than usual. Majority of tenants, like a lot of the inquiry, whether it's new cafes, industrial, a lot of small shop fronts, a lot of those are tending to be on the shorter side, 1 to 2 years max. Storage units, you're looking 3 to sort of 6 months. Tenants quite hesitant to lock in long term at the moment, not knowing what's in front of them in terms of the economy and business itself out there. Generally, the only ones that I've really seen longer leases are your bigger gyms or maybe your bigger businesses that have multiple locations. They tend to be your guys that are sort of over that 3-5 year period in terms of establishment. But yeah, solely those bigger leases where we're looking at long term. Majority of the other inquiry I'm dealing with is generally an initial term, short, 1 year, and then they might have an option period behind it to obviously give them that ability to lock in longer term. But yeah, a little bit scared jumping in head first and locking themselves into long initial leases up front is what I'm seeing. How about you, Birch?
And I think a key definition would be let the people know commercial is very different to residential. Residential is very relaxed to break a lease. The penalties are quite minimal. You could do a 10-year lease and still have to give like 4 weeks notice to get out. The easiest way to think of commercial leasing, it's like your phone bill. You're locked in for your 3 years or you pay it out. Regardless if you use it, lose it, you're locked in. So the get out clauses are not as friendly as in the residential market. So you can definitely see where, especially when why the tenants are concerned about taking on that commitment, because if you take on a 3-year lease at $100,000 a year rent, you've effectively got a debt now of $300,000. That's got to be paid off if you use it or if you open your doors or you don't. So, and a lot of the time it's your name on it. There's big liabilities. In theory, in paper, you could lose your house effectively. If your name's on the lease, that debt accrues. But that's another topic to go down if that's even enforceable, or the reality of that's enforceable with guarantees. But that is the risk and why tenants are wanting only those shorter leases and that financial commitment. But we were talking before of where the hesitancy from landlords would be to enter into that short-term lease. And we were just sort of working out the numbers of basically before the owner starts really seeing rent, what's the cost of finding that tenant? Do you want to run through some of those financial considerations, which is why an owner may not agree to only a 6-month rent because how much it's costing them to find that tenant, and they rather keep it empty for another 6 months to hopefully find a tenant for 3 or 5 years.
Yeah, looking on the small side, we ran 2 examples, one at 50, one at 150 in terms of lease per annum. And the numbers pretty much stacked up for a full year of income on that site that the owner had to pay in expenses before they would receive anything. And as an example, example of these expenses, you've got obviously the rent, an expectation of, let's say, a 6-month vacancy period until you find that tenant. Obviously, you've got that holding cost, you've got marketing campaign, you've got a leasing agent that then charges 10% on your annual. So there's 10% as soon as you find your tenant. You might have incentives with that new tenant. So if they're coming in wanting to do a fit out, you might have a further 3 months, 6 months, could be a couple of weeks, but further incentives to realize there. Legal documentation, cleaning, repairs, rates, insurance, holding costs, outgoings, etc. So on a $50,000 shop, or an asking of $50,000 per annum shop for lease, looking about $60,000 of expense, which pretty much eats up that entire initial 1 year. And it's almost the same for that $150,000 shop. You're looking at about $170,000 in expenses. So you're looking at a year and some change with those expenses before a landlord starts to see any real return in their pocket. And that's probably why we've always had the historically those longer leases in commercial.
And you made a really good point for landlords to take away. Even though it's a lot better to negotiate with the tenant that you have already, even if they are asking for $5,000 off the rent, sometimes you got to swallow your pride and your ego and be like, okay, if I don't take that, I'm going to lose a full year's rent in finding a new tenant. And even though you may not be happy with the rent reduction, if they've been a good tenant paying rent, like that's the other thing. It's not only the burden, like the risk of a year to find the tenant, the risk of them lasting longer than a year, the risk of them paying the rent on time. Like you just got some numbers on the success rate of businesses lasting longer than 1 year, 2 years, 3. Do you want to run through some of those?
Yeah, and that's what exactly I was going to go to next. Like keeping that tenant for this reason. Not only do you need to find it, but you need to obviously ensure the tenant stays put and is there to stay. So this is straight from the ABS data. New businesses between 75% and 80% survive a year. That drops to 60 to 65.
That's 75. So 35. So there's a 35% chance the tenant
25.
that you just 25% chance.
Yeah.
So of the tenant you just spent a year's wait, like income to find, may not be there the next year.
You put 4 tenants in, one of those is going to die, essentially, from that data.
So
that
now you're in the hole for 2 years.
Exactly.
Okay. So yep.
Surviving 2 years, 60 to 65%. We drop to 3 years, it's pretty much a 50-50. Drop to 5 years, you're looking about 40 to 45%. And then anything that's been operating for 20 years or still operating after 20 years, it's generally about 15 to 20%. So, you've got 10 businesses, 2 would be lucky to survive over that 20-year period. More importantly, like majority of those leases we talked about historically, 3 to 5 years, you've got 10 leases, 5 of the businesses still existed after that point. So
yeah,
I mean, that's huge. I think really important data there. And for the year of 24 to 25, we had about 437 new businesses commence and 370 leave the industry. So yeah, big numbers, and it's you understand.
Wait, again, so 429,000 or 429?
437,000 new businesses, and then 370 businesses exited the market. So you've got about a 50-60 surplus. But
that's good. At least it's in a surplus.
I think that Jim Chalmers did this, and he was like, after his tax change, we've had the biggest boost in new startup businesses across the ATO, but there's a massive difference between new business and GST registrations. Generally, you count a GST registered business as a properly operating business. Sometimes it might be restructuring that we see count as a new business of an existing structure. So, from the figures out there, it looks like, and you can sort of see it. Obviously, it's tough out there for these tenants, and especially just with cash flow. I think cash flow is king, and as you start a new business, forget about the fit out. You've got council. You're waiting back. You're working with a town planner. You might have already signed a lease. You're waiting to hear back for a simple change of use. You're looking anywhere 60 to 90 days, more holding costs, fit out. Obviously you're not going to immediately turn a profit. Entering a new marketplace, you need to establish a clientele. So it's a real roll of the dice out there, and I definitely take my hat off to guys out there and girls giving it a red hot crack, because it's not an easy job to do, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that sort of data highlights, if an owner's had a tenant in there for many years, they're the golden business. And yes, you would love your income to keep going, but you don't want to lose a business that's been operating longer than 3 years. Like they're the rare ones. So as much as you want to be sometimes the tough, well, no, I want to be the tough landlord, but you want your income to be going up. And like just hearing those numbers, especially
if I think if you've got a business that's been there post 5 years, a mature business tenant, I think it's worth every penny to renegotiate. Obviously, there's ways that you can sort of work around that, whether you bring your base rent back, you give them a bit of a rent-free period, but you sign up a longer lease again, and after your rent reviews year on year, you might make up for that little bit of lost income. But as we've just done the numbers there, you go and find a new tenant, you don't work with these guys, well, you're up for a year and change rent. And that's if they survive. What I mean?
And then the next one you get could be one of the 4 that don't survive. So you're going through it. And I get the owner side of it. Like we've talking about land tax, and I just keep looking at, like, say, 24 Carter Road. Now that property 10 years ago, the land tax was $5,000 a year, $8,000 a year, and now it's 27 plus council. The income of the property is the income is $60,000 a year, and the outgoings are $30,000 a year. So in the last 15 years, the ratio of income to outgoings, let's say it was 10% of outgoings, now it's 50% of outgoings. So you can understand why when that owner does get that business that does survive, they're trying to get that rent up, because they're looking at it going, yes, I want my income to go up 50%. It's not because I'm being greedy. I'm somehow own this property for another 10 years and I'm getting 50% less in my pocket. How does that work? I need the rent to go up. And then the vice versa, and the same on the tenant side. So
that's a massive point, though, because not too many people are thinking like that. Generally you think, oh, the owner, mate, you own it. You're in the better position. Yeah, you know what I mean. And that's a perfect example, that land tax and eating into in an income. I mean, at the end of the day, as an investment, you purchase property for a return, and you're almost better off when you hear those sorts of scenarios, just putting it in the bank and letting interest tick over in these environments, rather than rolling the dice and finding tenants, holding costs, and then by the time you've got a tenant, if it stays or not, and then your outgoings are increasing year on year. I mean, I don't think many people think of the sad side of the landlord, but the land tax change has been massive, and it probably gives a bit of perspective as to, asking rents are where they are, because that's where they need to be.
Well, that's the thing, the increase, and I'm going through it with a lot of rent, and this is what's stemming the rent negotiations. The landlord's going, my outgoings have doubled. I want that increase passed on to the tenancy. And I'm saying to a lot of these owners going, I understand when we'll get charging $300 a square meter, only $50 of that was outgoings. Now you're still wanting your $250 a square meter, but your outgoings are $150. So you're wanting $400 a square meter. That's just not the marketplace at the moment. So you can see where that stems from, and where this is bad. And not to get on more rants, I think we have good rants. We do on the rent freeze. The dangerous thing of this balance falling out of whack with the economy geared towards property is when it's not desirable for investors, that stops people buying property, renovating property, using lawyers, getting cleaners, and that construction arm. That all stops when this ratio of it being viable to buy commercial property. And I think the biggest thing of like the budget proposal, what was the scariest, and I didn't think it was the negative gearing, it was the 50% tax on small businesses. Because who in their right mind is going to start up a business when you go through those failure rates? And there's other data you had as well, which was 80% of small businesses are seeking financial assistance to just keep the doors open. When we think, why should a small business take on debt? To grow, not to survive. Because if you're not going to do anything different, you're going to be in a worse position in 12 to 24 months because you're just paying off your debts. So when that falls out of whack, then our sort of economy crumbles.
Yeah, I think that was a massive one. 20% borrowing finance last year to grow. The rest was just managing cash flow or to keep the business alive. So you sort of get you get lost in the everyday, and when you take these figures in, it's shocking, isn't it? You know, we just went back before the podcast. We're thinking, what, 20% borrowed to grow? Crazy out there. But yeah, like I said, got to take your hats off to those people out there going and giving it a red hot crack.
Yeah, and I think the message, landlords out, I think tenants, you need to understand the owner side as well, the cost of finding it, and you can sort of lean towards why they will keep it empty that little bit longer to hopefully find that golden egg of that business who is established. But also owners, you need to understand the economy dynamics are shifting, the confidence is shifting, and sometimes it's got to be a little bit more flexible. So
yeah, I think working together and finding a common ground is probably the way to go in the current environment. Because
if at the end of the day, if the tenant wins, the landlord wins, everybody wins. They're only going to pay rent if they have money. And sometimes, as much as the owner doesn't want to think of themselves as like a business partner to the tenant, but sometimes giving them that extra flexibility at the beginning, maybe the difference of them surviving to year 2 to year 10 and that business giving it a go. And I know for an owner, that can be the hardest thing to think of when you're like, you've just paid your mortgage for a year, your last tenant left the property trashed and it cost you more. You're thinking, for fuck's sake, who's giving me the go? My land tax doubled. No, I need to get this back. So it's almost like a relationship. You go out of the bad one and then you get in a new one. You take on some of the memories of the old one. You got to try not to do that. Think of everything as a blank slate. Give them a fair crack. And hopefully you've got a landlord that does have a bit of flexibility. They may have owned it for a long time and they don't have that bank pressure that they can give you a crack. And a lot of the time that's the tenant selling themselves. You don't think of applying for a rental property as like a business application, but if you do present it that way, then you may be able to get some more flexibility from an owner if you sell them the dream to give you a crack. So yeah. Anyway,
awesome.
I think that's
it's an interesting topic, but I think we smashed through the numbers there. Quite enlightening, or well, not enlightening, eye-opening, I guess. But thanks, guys. Thanks,
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
See ya. Bye.